I was a skeptic too with fasting. I'd heard about it way back when I was bodybuilding. Thought was I was going to lose a lot of muscle. My metabolism was going to slow down. All these things that people throw out there when it comes to fasting. In all actuality, the exact opposite happens. Guys, I'm Kyle, also known as the Panda Man. In today's video, I'm going to tell you how to stop playing mental tug-of-war with your dieting. For years, I would diet like most of you. I would cut calories, and it would get to a point where the hunger would overtake me. You can no longer sustain it. Now, the problem with that model, right? So we're talking about the models and how most people are playing with the wrong model when it comes to trying to change their body through their food intake, through their nutrition, through their eating. So you have this image of what you want to become, right? You want to lose weight. So that means you have diet, cut calories, but then you get hungry, and then what do? You want to eat. Even my peak in bodybuilding, when I would follow these models and be eating 14, 15, 1,600 calories a day, there were times when I would break because I couldn't withstand the hunger. So then I'd go binge on stuff like a jar of almond butter, right? Then it leaves you feeling guilty and all this. Now, when you're using that model, metabolic rate's going to come down to match what you're putting in. So your metabolic rate can go up or down 40%. Most people have never experienced it going up 40%. We've all experienced it going down 40%. That's one of the downsides. When food is coming in frequently, and your body recognizes that as the main energy source, it's going to keep lowering the basal metabolic rate to match what you're putting in. So let's say I lowered it down to 1,500 calories for a guy my size. Now, when the hunger overtakes me, I can no longer withstand the diet. I go back to eating a normal amount of food, or probably more, because my hunger hormones, ghrelin, all this stuff is upregulated. All my fat storing enzymes are upregulated. I go back to eating a normal amount of food. Guess what? I get fatter than when I started the diet. And then we repeat this. You go 6 months, you kind of break, then you do it again. It completely doesn't work. So with that model, what we have to do is think of how we put a model that actually serves us, where we can kind of circumvent hunger. So let's talk about hunger. When people feel hungry, the initial instinct is go eat. When you start to view hunger as an emotion, that's what I teach my clients and my students. Hunger is an emotion, and it's largely dictated by your emotions in sleep patterns too, so just keep that in mind. But when hunger comes, it's usually only lasts for a minute or two. If you can shift your focus away from the hunger, it passes. What do most people do when they feel hungry? They start focusing on that feeling of hunger. They go eat, they feel guilty. Oh, I'll start again tomorrow. I'll do it again tomorrow. Have to reframe hunger when you're switching this model to a fasting model. When you feel hunger initially, you have to view it and tell yourself, this is what fat loss feels like. That is a key distinction. Now, that's something I came up with even before I started fasting when I was bodybuilding. Because the hunger would just be constant. When I was eating 4 or 5 meals a day, 1,500 calories a day, the hunger was nonstop. So I trained my brain and I reframed it as, okay, when you feel this is actually a good thing because it means you're losing fat. So that's a key thing, and that's something when people start with my fasting program, it's one of the key things that I teach them. Hunger equates to this is what fat loss feels like. So now moving on from that, let's talk a little bit about willpower. Anything that's purely willpower based, not going to form a habit around. Think about willpower is doing stuff that you don't want to do. It's very finite. The part of your brain that willpower is stored in, prefrontal cortex, the human part of your brain, by the end of the day, your willpower is spent. You can have the best intentions in the world with your diet, but if you had a busy day at work with your family, there's no willpower left. So what happens? You go and binge eat because you felt stress. This ties into another key point that I teach anybody in my program. Food is a drug. Most people are seeking out food because they're trying to calm themselves. And they get a temporary calming, just like if you had a beer or anything like that. You get some good dopamine, you get all this feel-good stuff going on in your brain. That goes away. And then what? The pattern repeats itself. You have to do it again. Then you feel guilt. So you're playing again in this model where it's based on willpower. You feel guilty because you think you didn't have enough willpower, not realizing you're just playing the wrong model. You're playing in a flawed model. This is why all these people that teach still, it's about the calories in, calories out. And I always challenge them, show me somebody, there are outliers that have had success with that. 9.5 out of 10 people fail with traditional dieting. They're based on willpower. There's only so much you can cut, and you're not going to do that forever. Tying into the willpower thing, you're only going to form a habit around something that you find pleasurable to do. That's a key thing. So with my fasting, when it's time to feast, as the hours get closer, I look forward to that with great anticipation. It's like an event. Every night when we have family dinner, Susie makes a big feast. It's awesome. So it's shifted from this diet that I'm trying to become somebody, right, to this thing where I actually look forward to it. Where dieting, I used to eat out of Tupperware like many of you. I would weigh all my food. I would track everything way before there were apps for this. I would use the nutrition almanac, look everything up. But the model was broken. So that's a question you have to ask yourself. Am I using a lot of willpower to form this habit? In this case, diet. If the answer is yes, if you can't wait for it to be over, it's not going to succeed. Diets typically, as most people know them, have a defined start date and end date. Well, what happens when the end date comes? You're going to revert right back to where you were before. Then the frustration sets in. For years, I kept thinking that there was going to be some magical supplement or nutrient, or there was something I wasn't doing right. Like if I just found out what that one thing was, and I made that tweak, whether it was cutting out carbs or whatnot, it would finally stick. And it never wound up being the case. So I was a skeptic too with fasting. I'd heard about it way back when I was bodybuilding. Thought was I was going to lose a lot of muscle. My metabolism was going to slow down. All these things that people throw out there when it comes to fasting. In all actuality, the exact opposite happens. So let's talk about starvation mode. With starvation mode, you do a typical North American diet. That is what happens. Metabolic rate comes down. Your hunger hormones start to spike and they get out of control. Your fat storing enzymes are upregulated. Fat burning enzymes are downregulated. Now you go back, like I said before, eating the normal amount of food, and you start packing on all this fat. You've trained your body to do that. Most people, when they're following that type of program too, the calories in, calories out, what are they also doing? They're doing all this junk cardio. They have to burn calories. When you do junk cardio, as I call it, because the purpose of why you do something has a big effect on the outcome and the physiology of the body. If you're doing junk cardio to burn calories, your body gets more efficient at utilizing fats. Let me repeat that. Your body gets more efficient at utilizing fat. That sounds good, right? But what if your car got more efficient at using gasoline? That means it uses less of it. So your body's it's burning less and less fat through the activity. And the calories in, calories out, when people say, I burn this many calories in my workout, it doesn't matter. It matters what's happening outside the workout. Just like in the workout, how much muscle do you build? Are you concerned with that? You're not building any muscle in the workout. It's the stress response. The main reason we use exercise, or I use exercise, is for the brain, functioning of the brain, and to make the body more insulin sensitive. So it all comes down to insulin. Now, when you see people that lose weight when it comes to a traditional North American diet, cutting calories, cutting out whole food groups, why does it work temporarily? Because there's less of an insulin response. And I'm surprised more people have not made this connection. If you're taking in less food, you're producing less insulin, but you're still producing insulin constantly. When insulin is raised, it is the most anabolic hormone in the body. Anabolic means growth. A lot of people hear anabolic, they think your muscles are going to grow. In most cases, the anabolic effect of insulin makes the fat cell grow. So you're cutting, and you could be eating clean. I've heard this so many times. I eat clean. I'm eating well. I can't understand why I'm losing weight. Well, you're hitting the insulin button 5-6 times a day. What do you think is going to happen? Insulin's elevated. It is impossible to lose body fat. There's a great book, Why We Get Fat, I read years ago by Gary Taubes. He was an investigative journalist, so no background in nutrition, but he started realizing, okay, this doesn't work, this caloric model. So he started examining all these different cultures that were in poverty and whatnot, really didn't have access to a lot of food, but a lot of the people were still fat and obese. And it came down to the effect of insulin. Tying that back into what I was talking about, guys, you have to find pleasure in what you're doing. And with fasting, people say, well, isn't that just starving yourself? Starvation is not a choice. Fasting is a choice. And the angle that you come at something with when it comes to forming a habit will dictate a lot of the physiology within the body. If you're stressed and you're anxious about your diet, when most people hear the word diet, right away, cortisol spikes because they don't want to do it. And they've been down that road and they know it's suffering and it's not going to really lead to a long-term change. So next, I'm going to talk to you guys about the demons you have to be on guard against. And I think it's really important, talking about fasting, really address the psychology of it. That's where the game is won or lost. You stick around to the end. I'm going to tell you how you can lose 7 pounds in 20 days and keep it off. So make sure you keep watching to see what I got for you. Now, when you go down this journey of fasting, I take a spiritual stance with my fasting. I've become more and more interested in how the Bible talks about fasting, and many religions have always talked about fasting. The devil's greatest weapon is temptation, in many cases food. Devil does not want you fasting. Why? Because you're going to get more clarity, you're going to build confidence, you're going to build inner strength. Devil wants to plant that wedge of doubt within your head. So when you start fasting, what is going to happen? You're going to get attacked by what I call the demons. The demons are going to show up in forms of other people that say they are concerned for you. What you're doing is not healthy. You're going to start researching stuff and say, oh, maybe I could just do carnivore or something like that, or I can try this first. And I have people that come to me all the time, right there on the precipice of breaking through mentally, realize this is a lifestyle they have to start living because what they have been doing has not worked over the past 10, 20, 30 years. So why would you keep going back to that way? That's the definition of insanity, according to Einstein. Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. So just examine your patterns, which ties in, or come back to the demons. With mind mapping, everything's about patterns. You have to recognize patterns, you have to utilize patterns, and create new patterns when the old ones are not serving you. You could get really good at recognizing your patterns and you become more self-aware, which fasting will help you do. Because the game is won or lost up in the mind. You have to start examining the thoughts you're having. What do you do when you feel hunger? How are you going to calm yourself down? What are you going to tell yourself? What is the internal conversation that is going on? Self-awareness will bleed into every other area of your life. Fasting is really a great self-development tool, in my opinion. Weight loss, the health is really the tip of the iceberg with it. Now, coming back to demons, when you expect them, so the brain likes patterns, as I said, prediction, response. Know that they're going to attack you at first. And when they attack you, the battle is, are you going to give in to them? Are you going to give in to that wedge of doubt? Are you going to give into the momentary hunger? Are you going to give into the bright, shiny object with the latest person you saw on Instagram telling you to do carnivore and eat this much protein and limit your carbs to this much and blah, 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 all of this stuff? You have to put blinders on. You have to block it out. Now, I promise you, once you block it out and you do what I teach for 5 to 6 weeks, you'll never look back and you'll never go back to the old way of being. You're going to simplify your life. Your body's going to dramatically transform. Your mind is going to be much clearer. Your energy is going to be much better. So be on guard against the demons. It's something that's not talked a lot about with fasting, or just this whole video in general, the psychology of fasting. Realize you're playing in the wrong model. You have to put a new model on top of that. You're going to try to eat good, nutritious foods. Now, losing those 7 pounds in 20 days. Here's the challenge I have for you. The next 3 weeks, I want you to do a 48-hour fast. Go Sunday night to Tuesday night, and then go into 1 meal a day. Over the next 3 weeks, I want you to eat 6 meals a week. During your fasting period, you could have coffee, you could have water with salt, we call it the juice. You could have tea. When you break your fast, start with fruit. With your feast, that follows the fruit. Anything that came from the earth. How much? As much as you want. Eat until you're full. As you build your appetite, that's how you're gonna drive up your metabolic rate. Experience this myself. I have a voracious appetite, and I can really push it with the meals. And guess what? I keep getting leaner and leaner. And now I'm at the point where I just maintain single-digit body fat year-round. Where before, it would be a battle to get to single digits for my bodybuilding shows, and I was only maintain that for a couple weeks, and then it was gone. It was like a mirage. If you want a more detailed explanation of how to lose that 7 pounds in 20 days, click the link in the pinned comment. I got a free PDF for you that'll lay all this out, the structure of the meal, what you have to do, how to set yourself up. I'm telling you guys, you'll never look back. Please let me know how you do, and let me know if you need any help.